My name is Joe. These are just opinions. I am Joepinionated. Today we're doing the top 25 albums of the year 1974. 25 best from 1974. Jump right into it. Number 25. I'll get to some honorable mentions a little bit later on. I'll let you know what I've got them ranked. I've got them all ranked on Rate Your Music. In 1974, I'm in a Discord with the Taste Like Music channel. That's Joe and Jason over there. That's fun. You listen to anywhere from 50 to 100 albums from any given year, put them in order of your favorites, and then you argue with a bunch of random people that you've never met before about how your list is better than theirs. It's really fun. Number 25 comes in as a 4-star album, so starting off pretty hot. Number 25, I've got The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway from Genesis, Peter Gabriel on vocals, Tony Banks, keyboards, Mike Rutherford on bass, Steve Hackett on lead guitar, Phil Collins on drums and backing vocals. Phil Collins, one of the best drummers of all time, Phil Collins. So this was the last one that had Peter Gabriel on vocals before he embarked on his solo career. Art rock, whatever you want to call it. Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, progressive prog rock album ever. Some of my favorite tracks, the title track, The Broadway Melody of 1974, Back in NYC, Lily White Lilith, Lamia, and Riding a Scree. Number 24 comes from Robert Palmer, and it's Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley. Funky record, features Lowell George, who's one of my favorite frontmen of all time, from Little Feat, on guitars and backing vocals. I'm assuming he does backing vocals on this. It sounds like a Little Feat record. He has the meters as his instrumental backing. He has the meters and Art Neville on keyboard. Pretty Purdy on drums. Favorite track is Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley, the title track. I really like Blackmail, their cover of Sailing Shoes, Little Feat song. I have Little Feat episodes on this channel. Like, comment, subscribe, check them out. And Robert Palmer is so closely tied to Little Feat and Lowell George. I couldn't imagine what they would have done together in the 80s had Lowell lived. This album was one that I didn't discover until doing the deep dive for 1974, so it was new to me. It's in heavy rotation. I love it. I don't have it on wax yet, but I do have it on the streaming services. Number 23 comes from an artist also featured on this channel. I've got top 50 songs ranked for Tom Waits. In 1974, this is his second album, The Hardest Saturday Night. I'm a big Tom Waits guy. I love Tom Waits. Own quite a few of his albums, maybe more than anybody else. I've got quite a Tom Waits collection. In this one, you have Jim Hewart on bass. You got Bill Goodwin on drums. Tom Waits does the vocals, piano, and all the guitar on this album. There's a blend of beat poetry with folk blues. Exemplifies his unique narrative style. Saturday night music. This is pretty easy lounge style music. His voice isn't as gravelly in the first couple albums as it gets later on with Small Change and stuff after that. It's not as experimental at this point either. It's pretty run-of-the-mill. Most people will like it. The Heart of Saturday Night comes in at number 23. Favorite tracks is the title track, Looking for the Heart of Saturday Night, Please Call Me Baby, Drunk on the Moon, 4-star album, Tom Waits, The Heart of Saturday Night. Next up, Dolly Parton, Jolene, 1974. I forget what it was. She had a relationship, I think, with the producer. Maybe it was somebody in her band, and this was sort of a send-off from that part of her career. I Will Always Love You, I think, is a send-off to this dude. Jolene, the title track, huge hit. Easily Dolly's kind of like biggest album. We love Dolly around here. I haven't done another Dolly episode on this channel. I love her Christmas albums, even the most recent one. We just keep buying them, and they're great, and they turn into our favorites. Christmas on the Square. Dolly Parton's super cool. Obviously a great person, famous for being a good person, philanthropist. Dolly Parton. Number 21, going with David Bowie's Diamond Dogs. I have that at 4 stars, 4-star album. This one has Herbie Flowers on bass, Tony Newman on drums, Mike Garson on piano, Alan Parker, awesome on guitar. Incredible on this album. David Bowie playing sax, singing, guitar, synthesizer, production, writing. Now, David Bowie's like a musical genius. Like he's like Stevie Wonder territory. I don't know if he's on a Rushmore of greatest musicians of all time or greatest writers of all time, but he's got to be in the conversation. Is Diamond Dogs his best album? No, it's not his best album, and I think that it's kind of a popular one not to like as much as some of the other hunky dories and that sort of stuff. But you know what? I really like this one. The reason that I got into this album was because of Beck's cover of Diamond Dogs on Moulin Rouge, I think that was on Moulin Rouge. I really liked Beck's cover of that. I was super big into Beck at the time. I wasn't as big into David Bowie, just knew, some of the greatest hits. This album has Rebel Rebel, one of the coolest record stores I ever went into in Greenwich Village. I know it's closed now, was Rebel Rebel. Really crazy, like they'd stack everything vertically. We Are the Dead is a standout for me on this album. The title track, Diamond Dogs is one of my favorite David Bowie songs. I think it's a pretty cool album, and I think it's underrated. I think with any David Bowie album, though, if you put it on and just sit back and enjoy, they're all really good. All right, number 20, love him or hate him. I'm going with Frank Zappa, Apostrophe. Strange Mind. A lot of his music is really hard to bear. It's not easy listening. It's jazz with rock and absurd humor. I think he's the only person that ever really did that. Zappa plays bass. He's an exceptional guitar player, an orchestrator essentially of these crazy elaborate songs. This album also featured Jack Bruce from Cream, George Duke on keyboards, Ruth Underwood on percussion, Napoleon Brock on saxophone, Jim Gordon on drums. Monster drummer. I know he turned into a bad dude later on. Jim Gordon's so good, especially I love him on Nilsson Schmilsson. The biggest song was Don't Eat Yellow Snow. Used to love listening to live tracks of that. My favorite song on the album, it's a popular one, is Cosmic Debris. I went and watched Dweezil, Zappa to Zappa, years ago. Really loved it for the first half and then just wanted to leave. I just got sick of it by the time the second half started. I'm just being honest. Amazing musicians, but that part of my brain is obviously clearly missing. They can keep track of songs that far in. Jim Gordon on drums, like this guy, you deserve a medal for being able to play any Zappa track. I don't know, sometimes I really get into a Zappa groove. I'm not currently in one, but I'm open to it. All right, number 19. Best albums 1974. I'm going with Bill Withers' Adjustments. This is his last album with James Gadson on drums, who's one of my favorite drummers of all time, especially on this album and the previous one, Still Bill. Melvin Dunlap on bass, Benorse Blackman on guitar. Love watching him in any sort of live footage. The guy is a sick guitar player. Ray Jackson on keyboards. Really cool too when you see him banging away on the piano. I will admit that this one's a bit of a step back as far as Bill Withers go. I have Bill Withers episodes on this channel as well. But as far as Bill Withers, his trajectory, the first two albums are far and away my favorite too. This one is a little bit of a step back. It's not a 5-star album. I got it a 4-star album. Favorite track for me is Railroad Man. It's the closer on the album. Green Grass, another one I go back to a lot. Bill Withers, such a cool story. There's a movie about him too. I think the movie's called Still Bill. Just had it with the record business and walked away from music. Number 18 for 1974, we're going with Supertramp, Crime of the Century. That's Roger Hodgson, Rick Davies, John Helliwell, Dougie Thompson, Doug Seibenberg. Favorite track, Bloody Well Right, you bloody well right. Asylum and School. Dreamers, another famous one from that album. The Taste Like Music guys pointed out what a step up it was from their previous album. Supertramp's definitely a hit and miss, and I thought that was a funny point. Number 17, another 4-star album for me. I'm going with Sly and the Family Stone's Small Talk. There's a Riot Going On from 71. Not his best album. Sly's still the man. So incredibly important to music and funk. I mean, he got Miles Davis to convert. Every time I see that, it blows my mind. Miles standing backstage and watching him, and then Miles, like one of the greatest musicians ever. You know what? I need to go down this road instead. That's after Miles had worked with Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie. Like, he worked with the biggest people in the world before him. And then to just, go and watch Sly play and then, put out all these insane albums. Bitches Brew, his big fusion albums. Sly also has Freddie Stone, Larry Graham, Rose Stone, Cynthia Robinson, Greg Errico. Some of my favorite tracks: Better Thee Than Me, This Is Love, Holding On, and Wishful Thinking. Mad respect for Sly and the Family Stone. 16th best album of 1974. I'm giving it to Shuggie Otis for Inspiration, Information. Incredible guitar player. He plays bass, guitar, keyboards. He does the vocals on this album. Favorite track on this album for me is Sparkle City. Inspiration, Information, also the title track, really great. Sparkle City I've got as a 5-star song. You might recognize him for Strawberry Letter. That's not on this one. Strawberry Letter 23. Anyways, respect to Shuggie Otis, number 16. Really underrated guitar player and writer. Here's an album, number 15, was a new listen for me as well. It comes from Cooder. The album is Paradise and Lunch. Cooder, another one of those great musicians in that sort of crew of songwriters working together at the time. I've seen Rye work with Randy Newman. I've seen him work with Little Feat. Incredible slide guitar player. This album was a total surprise for me. Some standouts. Jesus on the Main Line stood out. That was one I definitely played over and over again. Blend of folk, blues, and world music influences. Number 14 comes from music legend, outlaw legend, Willie Nelson. Phases and Stages from Willie Nelson, 1974. I've got it a 4-star album, number 14 on the year. This album has obviously Waylon Jennings as his main outlaw sidekick there, and later on in the Highwaymen together. Waylon's featured in backing vocals on this one. They both famously left Nashville around the same time and started the outlaw movement. Bobby Nelson on piano, Mickey Raphael on harmonica, Paul English on drums. Some standouts: Bloody Mary Morning, the Phases and Stages themes as well. Heaven and Hell, great track on the backside. Willie Nelson comes in number 14. Number 13, we're going with the Hollies, self-titled The Hollies from 1974. Alan Clark came back to the band. So Alan Clark, Graham Nash, Tony Hicks, Bernie Calvert, Eric Haydock, Terry Sylvester. So many great tracks. This album features The Air That I Breathe, which is obviously one of their biggest hits. My favorite song on the album is actually Falling Calling. The Hollies, if you don't have any of their albums, I suggest picking up every one that you see. Number 12 is the last 4-star album on this list, comes from Santana. Borboletta, Carlos Santana, lead guitar, Doug Rao on bass, Michael Shreve on drums, Jose Arias on congas, Leon Thomas vocals, Carlos Santana. I mean, what can you say? The guy's incredible. My favorite track on the album is Practice What You Preach. It's the first time I listened to the whole album before. This is the first time. Santana in the 70s, his first 5-6 albums are all knockouts. I like his third album, I think is my favorite. Life Is Anew was another great track. Promise of a Fisherman. So that's it for the 4 stars. Number 11. Number 11 comes from Funkadelic, Standing on the Verge of Getting It On from Funkadelic. This one has George Clinton, obviously leading the group. Vocals, Eddie Hazel, guitar and vocals. We just talked about Eddie Hazel recently in our Ween episode about chocolate and cheese. Dean Ween is a huge Eddie Hazel fan, so he did a tribute song to him when he passed away called A Tear for Eddie. Billy Bass Nelson on bass guitar. Bernie Worrell on keyboards. Funkadelic. Favorite track is Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts. I also like Standing on the Verge of Getting It On and Sexy Ways. Number 10, the 4.5-star album for me. I'm going with cool jazz album from Chet Baker, and it's She Was Too Good to Me. It's Chet Baker on trumpet and some vocals. Bob James on keys, piano. Steve Gadd on drums, Ron Carter on bass, Michael Moore on clarinet, and Gary Burton on vibraphone. Pretty much every song on this album a 4.5. I can't really think of a favorite. I will say Tangerine is probably my favorite track on the album. Deeply emotional album from Baker. He's incredible with the trumpet. Lush arrangements. This one cemented Chet Baker, one of the all-time greats for jazz. Not usually something that I lean into too heavy. Whoever it was in the Taste Like Music Discord that kept pumping this one, thank you, because it was great. So shout out to whoever that was. Up next, number 9, I'm going with Rufus featuring Chaka Khan, Rags to Rufus, 1974. I've got this as a 4.5. This is a funk soul album featuring Chaka Khan on vocals, Kevin Murphy on guitar, Andre Fisher on drums, Bobby Watson on bass, Hawk Walensky on keyboards, Tony Maiden on guitar and backing vocals. My favorite track is the opening track, You Got the Love. This was a new listen for me as well. This deep dive. Thoroughly enjoyed the entire album. Album was not at all on my radar. 4.5 stars. All right, number 8. Continue on with the funk movement with, maybe the greatest funk band of all time, up there with Funkadelic. One of the GOATs, the originals. This is the Meters. And the album is Rejuvenation, featuring Art Neville, George Porter Jr., Ziggy on drums, Leo on guitar. I put it 4.5 stars. I love everything the Meters have done. All right, another 4.5 star funk album for number 7. This time it's Parliament, Up for the Downstroke. This one doesn't have Eddie Hazel on it. It's got Bootsy Collins on it. So this one's Bootsy, George Clinton, Bernie Worrell, Fred Wesley, the rest of the guys. I got it 4.5. These guys really, for me, in the 70s, do no wrong. Favorite song is Testify. Whatever Makes Baby Feel Good, for me, are the standouts on that album. Number 7, Parliament, Up for the Downstroke. Number 6, this one is a jazz fusion, jazz funk. In my opinion, the greatest jazz funk, jazz fusion guy ever. I mean, it's between him and Miles when he did that. It's Herbie Hancock. It's the follow-up to Headhunters. This one is called Thrust. Thrust is up there. It's probably like 3rd or 4th on my Herbie Hancock list. Herbie, came up with Miles, played with Monk, and played with everybody, really. He's one of those guys, one of the greatest jazz pianists, keyboard, synthesizer guys of all time. It's got Paul Jackson on bass, Mike Clark on drums, Benny Maupin on sax, Bill Summers on percussion. Chaka Khan does the vocals on Butterfly. That's jazz royalty right there. The 70s for jazz, incredible. Last 4.5 star album from 1974, the number 5 overall on the albums list here. The best albums of 1974 comes from Steely Dan, and in 1974, that's when they released Pretzel Logic. That's Donald Fagen on keyboards and vocals, Walter Becker, guitar, bass, Gary Katz produced that, Jeff Skunk Baxter on guitar, Denny Diaz on guitar, Ben Benai on guitar, Dean Parks on guitar, Jim Gordon on drums. At the time, the best drummer in the world was Jim Gordon, or one of the best. Michael McDonald on backing vocals. Steely Dan is kind of like a super group, right? Led by Fagen and Becker. Pop rock, jazz rock, yacht rock. Favorite tracks on this album would be Charlie Freak, With a Gun, the title track, Pretzel Logic, and Ricky Don't Lose That Number. Number 4, we move into five-star territory for number 4. Earlier this year, I went through a huge Neil Young phase. I'm going with On the Beach, number 4, an album that I was never really that crazy about until earlier this year. A friend of mine, massive Neil Young fan, passed away, so I did a bit of a deep dive, mourning my friend. On the Beach was speaking to me. Neil Young, Canadian icon, songwriter, one of the GOATs. Ben Keith on steel guitar, Tim Drummond on bass, Billy Talbot on bass as well, Ralph Molina on drums. Favorite songs? I like Ambulance Blues, I like On the Beach, I like Walk On. I like the whole album. I understand this is a really popular album, and it's one of those ones where it's popular to love. Speaks to me, means a lot for new reasons. This year is when I really got into it. Probably my 3rd favorite Neil Young album. We're going with number 3, 5-star record, Toots and the Maytals, and the album is In the Dark. For reggae music, there's 2 main people that I think of, that I think that most people think of it. This is soul roots reggae. Bob Marley and Toots. Toots Hebert has Jerry Matthias on it, Lloyd Parks, Carlton Barrett, Paul Douglas, Ralph McDonald. I love his tone. The band Slays. 5446, What's My Number? Sailing On. Take Me Home, Country Roads. His version is the best version, period. Take a Look in the Mirror. I See You. Gotta Be There. This guy's a legend. The band's a legend. He's very humble, a very cool person. Number 3, best album of 1974. I'm going with In the Dark. Second best album of 1974. I've got it at 5 stars. As far as favorites go, this is my favorite on the list. I think that there's a better album than it overall. Feats Don't Fail Me Now from Little Feat. So the band is Little Feat. That's Feat as an homage to the Beatles. And Lowell George had Little Feat. He used to be in the Mothers of Invention. I think it was somebody in that band that said he had little feet. And that's why he named his new band Little Feat. Lowell George on vocals, guitar, slide guitar. One of the best slide guitar players of all time, if not the very best, is Lowell George. Bill Payne on keyboards and vocals. Paul Barrere on guitar. Fred Tackett is on guitar. Kenny Gradney on bass. And Richie Haywood on drums, one of the best drummers in the world at the time. Richie Haywood opens up with Rock and Roll Doctor, one of my favorite Little Feat songs. Down the Road, Spanish Moon, The Fan, Cold, 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 Oh Atlanta. Feats Don't Fail Me Now is an incredible album from these guys. They're like a southern rock, almost like a Cajun thing. If you like country with a boogie beat, these are the men to meet. The 70s with Little Feat, some of my favorite music. Honestly, I put it right up there with the band, except for Little Feat had more great albums than the band. The band might have had more great songs. It's close. Check out my channel. I've got some great episodes on Little Feat. I read something recently about Robert Plant, talking about how Lowell inspired him to sing the way he sings. Jimmy Page in 1975 in Rolling Stone magazine said that Little Feat was his favorite American band. In 1975, that's his favorite American band? You need to know these guys. Little Feat comes in at number 2. Number 1 for me, the best album, and I mean really it should be tied with Little Feat, but number 1 from 1974, I'm going with Stevie Wonder's Fulfilling This First Finale. After the famous car accident he made Inner Visions. He got in a car accident, like a wreck, like 3 days later, went into a coma. They were playing Higher Ground, which is a song about reincarnation for him that pulled him out of the coma, came back. This is his next album, Fulfilling Us First Finale. I think it was the following year, right? 74. I think Inner Visions was 73. And he doesn't miss a beat. I mean, they call it the classic period, the 5-album run. But for me, Music From My Mind is not as good as the 4 after that. So Talking Book, Inner Visions, Fulfilling Us First Finale, and then Songs in the Key of Life. Those 4 albums are unstoppable, perfect albums. This guy is the musical genius, maybe the greatest of all time as far as musicians go, as far as having an ear goes. Insanely good drummer. Obviously keyboards, obviously singing. You watch him in that We Are the World documentary, so good. I love the part where he teaches Bob Dylan how to sing his part in that We Are the World documentary. That is so cool. And then The Blind Leading the Blind with Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder showing each other where the bathroom is. Favorite songs. Really like Boogie on Reggae Woman. You Haven't Done Nothing. I have a Stevie Wonder episodes on this channel as well for my breakdown of my favorite top 15, I think it is, Stevie Wonder songs on this channel. So like, comment, subscribe, check out the channel below. Favorite song on the album is actually Bird of Beauty. So that's it. That's it for 1974. These are the top 25 albums that I got. I'll do some honorable mentions right now, just to mention what didn't quite make the cut. 10 albums that didn't make the cut. Get Your Wings from Aerosmith. Walking Man from James Taylor. Pussycats from Harry Nilsson. There's Harry Nilsson episodes and Aerosmith episodes on this channel. Son of Dracula from Harry Nilsson. Not as good as Pussycats. That's the soundtrack. Pussycats, the one with John Lennon. Good Old Boys from Randy Newman. Great songs. Al Green, Explores Your Mind. Eno. Taking Tiger Mountain from Eno. Barry White, Can't Get Enough. Leonard Skinner's Second Helping was a bit of a shocker for me. I was surprised how much I liked that album. I didn't realize I liked Leonard Skinner as much as I did listening to that album. Didn't quite make the list. The 70s are amazing for music. Curtis Mayfield, Sweet Exorcist. Gil Scott-Heron, Winter in America, John Lennon, Walls and Bridges, The Band with Dylan, Before the Flood, Elton John, Caribou's Down Narrow Ways, Robin Trower, Jackson Browne, Kraftwerk. Waylon Jennings does have a couple albums this year. This Time, great single. The rest of the album's not that great. Ramblin' Man, great singles. The rest of the album's not that great. Some that went a bit higher on other people's lists in that Taste Like Music thing that, you know, Todd Rundgren's debut album it's good. I just not that into it. Doesn't really, you know, doesn't make me crazy. John Cale. Queen, like the Queen has 2 albums that year, Sheer Heart Attack and Queen 2. Brian May's tone on both of those albums is fantastic. It's 5 stars. The filler tracks on those albums are kind of blah. And I find that with most Queen. So I'm not like I don't really like Queen's albums. I like the greatest hits. Check out my Queen episodes on this channel. And for anybody to have Kiss in their top 25, you are nuts. They are awful. I don't hate the guys. I don't hate them. I'm saying officially, Kiss is an awful band. They are not a good band. I'm sorry I'm a little low on facts, high on opinions. Let me know where I went wrong. Let me know your top albums in the comments below, and check out my channel. I've got tons of lists on there, rankings from different years, movies, music, and my Edmonton Oilers as well. So I'm sorry I'm a little low on facts, high on opinions. Respect. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Submerged at sea, days and weeks at a time. 96 million pounds of steel go swimming by. I see your eyes surveying in the mirror on the tide. Am I overstating this need to make it right? 'Cause I know the reason why you hide beneath the waves. I'll keep on waiting. I'm counting down the days. We spin the air and waste the words the mind recites. The